Welcome back to another video. Today I'm talking about the Skirret. The Latin name for it is Cicerum, and I was able to start this plant by seed last year, and it has successfully overwintered, so I thought I'd do a video about documenting this plant, going over its uses and what I might try to use it for in the garden, and the whole assortment of different attributes that it can give or provide to the landscape. So this plant is a perennial. It comes back up from the roots each year, and it is hardy in zones 5 through 9. So this plant used to be popularly cultivated in Europe for a long time as a starchy root vegetable, and being used as kind of maybe somewhat of a staple crop in some respects, until the potato was introduced to Europe, and at which point the potato was a lot more convenient, easier to grow and prepare in some cases, and so the Skirret just kind of fell out of fashion, and that has remained since until this day. And now Skirret is kind of beginning to re-emerge a little bit, and has become an interesting plant to grow for some gardeners and permaculture enthusiasts, among others. So personally, I think this is a really cool plant that has a bunch of different uses. In terms of the edibility of this plant, it is the roots that are commonly eaten. They may have a bit of a fibrous core, which might be best removed. I would wonder if it depends on like the time of year when you harvest the roots, how developed that would be. Also if you harvest the roots and then you cook them, maybe you steam them, or something like that, you might be able to split it open and remove the core that way, if you need to. And the leaves, the foliage of the plant is also edible. So the plant is of course an umbelliferous vegetable. It's in the carrot family or the Apiaceae family. So it produces these umbels of flowers that is very attractive to beneficial pollinators and other beneficial insects. Not just like bees or anything like that, but it especially pulls in the some of the predator insects that go after some of the pest insects, right? So it helps to bring in insects like parasitic wasps, for example, right, which can go after various garden pests. And so these parasitic wasps can be a kind of like a cultural pest control system that you can use in the garden or in some type of agricultural scenario. So basically what I have here, I just want to kind of diagram out some of the differences between the carrot and the Skirret, right? You can see with the carrot here, we have a long central taproot. With the Skirret, we actually have a cluster of roots that come out from one central point, right? So if you see a Skirret growing like this and producing these kinds of clustered roots, that is basically just what it's supposed to do. It's not some nutrient deficiency, it's just kind of a unique characteristic, as opposed to some other of the umbelliferous plants or vegetables that we might be more familiar with. Also, the leaf structure is going to be different, right? The carrot leaves are a lot more lacy looking, a lot more fern-like, whereas we have with the Skirret, the leaflets are much more solid, kind of similar to parsnips, but they're a little bit wider, a little bit rounder than the parsnip leaflets. But these are just some basic characteristics that I wanted to kind of like contrast between the two plants, just so that we know what we're working with, and we don't get any surprises when we're out there in the garden. So how I was able to start growing this plant in the garden started last year when I got some seeds, and so what I did with those was I sowed them indoors, just in a pot. I very lightly covered them with soil, right? They're kind of fairly small seeds, so you don't want to bury them too deep. And then I tried to keep the surface of that pot evenly and consistently moist as much as possible, so the seeds wouldn't dry out, right, because they're at such a shallow depth, and so I was actually able to get some of them to sprout. And then of course, you go through the hardening off phase of letting those plants kind of in the pots acclimate to the outdoors a little bit. Unfortunately, I kind of lost track of the plant a little bit. I only ended up with one seedling that ended up surviving the hardening off phase. The others got pretty well burnt off from the sun. It may also speak to the danger of using black plastic pots, which can end up cooking the plants to some capacity if you're not careful. And then so I took that one seedling and I really made a point to take special care of it, right? Because I only had one. And I planted it out in one of the garden beds, and it made sure I kept it watered, and it grew. It wasn't particularly huge. It was just kind of took that whole year to establish itself, right? It still actually did send up an umbel of flowers and actually produced some seeds. We'll see if those seeds are viable or not, but I was actually kind of impressed that it actually flowered its first year of growth. So, and then it died down to the winter time, and I was actually pretty surprised when I was walking down one of the garden beds a couple of weeks ago, and I see this like big green plant, and I'm like, wait a minute, I think that's skirret, because it almost looks like a parsnip, but upon closer inspection, it's not the parsnip, of course, it's the skirret. And it was exactly where I had planted it, of course, so I knew it was that plant. And I was really surprised, because I thought like maybe voles might go after the roots or something like that, but they didn't seem to cause any damage. This year it's really coming in strong, quite a much larger plant than last year. It's doing quite well, and hopefully I can get some more seeds from that and then grow some more. One other note too, like a lot of other umbelliferous plants, right? Like, we have common edible plants like carrots, parsnips, parsley, and skirret as well, but we also have some other plants in that family that can be outright deadly, and so you definitely want to know what plant is what, right? You don't want to confuse the carrot with poison hemlock, and then you don't want to confuse the parsnip or the skirret with water hemlock or anything like that, right? So if you do plant these plants, make sure that you know where you plant them, know how to identify them, so you don't make any mistakes with identification or anything like that. So this is the skirret. It is not in flower. That is a dandelion. You can see here the leaves, kind of round, kind of heart-shaped, or the leaflets, or the terminal leaflet, and the other two leaflets, two sets of leaflets, kind of ovular. The leaves are toothed a little bit, finely toothed. This is the stalk from last year. It'll probably produce a much larger stalk this year, and so these leaves are edible as well. The taste is kind of carroty, with like a hint of like mustiness or something. But it's not like strong or overpowering. It's pretty good. It also kind of tastes kind of similar to celery, especially the aftertaste.